Hey, good morning. My name is Tim Kutz with Fairfax County. I want to welcome you to this meeting to discuss the draft plan amendment for the McLean Community Business Center. Before we begin, I would like to review some guidelines so everyone can participate and get the most out of this session. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube and shared on the project website. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. You may submit questions or comments into the Q&A box, which is located at the lower right of your screen at any time. If you do not see the Q&A box, you may have to click on the icon with the 3 dots on the lower right corner of your screen. When typing a question, please be sure to direct it to all panelists. For people calling into the meeting, you may hit *3 to raise your hand and ask a question. I will call your name during the Q&A portion of the meeting and unmute your microphone, at which point you will ask your question and hit *3 again to lower your hand. And I'll review these instructions again at the conclusion of the presentation. Questions and comments will be recorded and made part of the record for study and placed on the project website. The chat feature is also enabled for participants requiring technical support only. We ask that you please do not use the chat feature to comment or ask questions regarding the study. Instead, please use Q&A to submit questions or make comments. We also encourage you to submit written comments after the conclusion of today's meeting. An email address will be provided at the end of the presentation. Now I would like to welcome Dranesville District Supervisor John Faust to open the meeting with brief remarks. Supervisor Faust.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. The McLean CBC Task Force and county staff will provide an update on the work they have done to revise the comprehensive plan for downtown McLean. After they make their presentations, they will respond to any questions or comments you might have. So the task force is led by Kim Dorgan and is comprised of 20 McLean residents, including representatives of many of McLean's most active stakeholder groups. It has met regularly over the past 2 years, and its members have spent hundreds of hours considering how to redevelop downtown McLean to best achieve the community's vision. Before we get started, I really want to thank the task force members and county staff for their hard work on behalf of our community. Last time we met as a group regarding the planning effort was in December of 2018. That was when the county's consultant presented the vision plan that residents had developed over several months that summer. Following that meeting, the task force was charged with developing comprehensive plan language that would implement that vision. Today's presentation will explain what the task force is proposing. We also need to keep in mind why we are proposing to change the comprehensive plan for redevelopment of downtown McLean. Over the years, and most recently during the 2018 visioning effort, our community made clear that the shared vision of most McLean residents is for a revitalized downtown that primarily serves local residents, that includes active level ground level restaurants and retail, that is pedestrian friendly, and that retains some areas where the shops and services continue to be extremely very conveniently accessible to anyone. So a more vibrant and active downtown and a civic plaza that would serve as a focal point and gathering place in the center of McLean were also critical components of that vision. The vision defined by the community included more intense development in a central core area, less intense around that core, and then essentially no significant changes in the outer boundaries of the downtown area. So the task force used the results of the visioning effort as a foundation to develop draft text for the McLean Comprehensive Plan. Today will be your opportunity to see how the task force proposes to reflect our vision in plan language. The task force has considered levels of development, where development should be located, and what form it should take. The task force has also spent considerable time reviewing the impact of any development on public facilities such as schools, parks, and roads. You will hear the results of staff's analysis on some of these topics today. It is important to remember that when a plan is adopted, it is still just a plan. To get a project approved, any property owner will still need to file a rezoning application that is consistent with the plan language and the county zoning ordinance. Each rezoning application will be subject to substantial community review, including public hearings at the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, where all residents will be encouraged to participate. It's also important to remember that the comprehensive plan provides a long-term vision and could take decades to fully develop what is included in the plan. Going forward, any proposed development will be fully vetted with the community, and special attention will be paid to potential impacts on public facilities and other infrastructure. Obviously, over the years that it will take to implement the plan, we may need to add or otherwise mitigate impacts on public facilities to balance infrastructure with growth. So before I turn the meeting over to Kim Dorgan, I want to discuss where we go from here. The task force will likely have one or two more meetings before their proposed comprehensive plan text is presented to the county. You may submit comments for the task force's consideration through the end of this month. As will be explained in staff's presentation, you can participate in a virtual question and answer session with staff on November 16th from 12:30 to 1:30. A link will be provided on the project website. Additional virtual sessions may be scheduled if needed. The task force report and staff comments will be submitted to the Planning Commission. The Commission will conduct a public hearing and make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The Dranesville representative to the Planning Commission is John Ohlfelder, and John has joined us today. After receiving the Planning Commission's recommendation, the Board of Supervisors will also hold a public hearing before voting on whether to adopt the revised comprehensive plan. All through this process, county staff and staff in my office are available to go over any questions or comments you may have. Both the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors hearings will be open to the public, and if you choose to do so, you will be able to testify in person, by phone, or by submitting written or video testimony at either or both of those public hearings. So again, thank you for coming today. We will have the presentations, and then we are anxious to hear your questions and comments on the proposed plan. It's now my pleasure to turn today's meeting over to the chairman of the task force, Kim Dorgan. Kim?
Thank you very much, Supervisor Faust. And thank you for your leadership and your efforts to update the McLean Comprehensive Plan and to encourage development in downtown McLean. Since the task force was formed in May 2018, we've been meeting at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. We had a few months in hiatus once the coronavirus first hit Virginia, but we restarted our efforts in June. All of our meetings have been public on site, along with summaries of our previous in-person meetings. The task force used as a starting point the vision plan, which was created by Street Sense after conducting outreach to residents through 3 public meetings. Tweaked and modified the plan slightly and fine-tuned it to given our experiences and knowledge of McLean. Throughout the process, we have heard from individuals and organizations about ideas and concerns about how the plan might impact their neighborhoods. As a result of this impact, the task force has made changes to the plan to address their concerns and viewpoints. With the draft plan before you today, we believe the task force has found the middle ground between providing encouragement for development in our downtown while preserving what we like so much about our downtown. That is our local businesses and restaurants and which we can conduct. There is now each of us on the task force probably change a provision or an element here and there, but taken as a whole, the plan offers what residents stated they want: a sense of place, a more vibrant downtown, and a pedestrian and bike-friendly community. We look forward to hearing your thoughts today throughout the course of this conference. As chair of the task force, I want to thank Supervisor Faust for the opportunity to speak, and a special thank you to each member of the task force who has given so much of their time and energy over the past 2.5 years to produce this updated plan. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to you, Tim.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Supervisor Faust. I would now like to welcome Leanna O'Donnell from the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development, who will begin the presentation. Leanna?
Thank you, Tim. Good morning. My name is Leanna O'Donnell. I'm with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development. The McLean Community Business Center is an approximately 230-acre area centered around the intersection of Chainbridge Road and Old Dominion Drive and known as downtown McLean. The goal of this planning study is to update the comprehensive plan recommendations, which have not been updated comprehensively in over 20 years. Relatively recently, there have been a few site-specific updates to the plan, and there was a recognition by the county and the community that a comprehensive review of the plan would be of benefit to provide an opportunity to review the plan's ability to incentivize redevelopment opportunities and offer amenities. The comprehensive plan is a guide that is used by the community, staff, and county leaders to make decisions about land use in the county. The plan is not regulatory, but establishes the priorities, vision, and goals for community, and includes guidance related to land uses and intensities and priorities that should be considered with development review. This review is an update to the plan and not a review of a specific zoning application for a particular development proposal. If you could go to the next slide, please. The plan is implemented through the rezoning process, which requires additional public review by the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. Proposals to rezone property are typically initiated by property owners and are evaluated for conformance with the guidance in the comprehensive plan. Many of you have participated in the visioning effort in 2018, and we wanted to provide some background and the outcome on that process. The purpose of the visioning effort was to create a vision, a practical vision with a focus on economic realities of development, to obtain community input about the goals and priorities for a new vision for downtown, and to establish clear parameters for redevelopment and new development that includes community benefits. Through a series of community workshops and focus groups, consultants worked with the McLean community and staff, during which participants described what they desired for the future of the McLean CBC. Using the community feedback from the workshops, along with a market assessment of the estimated 10-year demand for uses such as retail, residential, hotel, and office, the consultant created a vision plan for the CBC. That vision plan is the basis for the task force, the community, and the county to develop the draft plan recommendations. The vision plan recommends the creation of a walkable town center or Main Street area with a mix of uses that foster a sense of place in the center of McLean. During the visioning process, there was a recurring theme from the feedback provided by the community of the need for a public gathering space in the center of McLean. This map shows the McLean CBC organized into 3 zones: a center zone, a general zone, and an edge zone. The center zone is shown in the dark purple. The general zone surrounds the center zone in the lighter purple, and the edge zone follows the edge of the CBC in the lightest purple color. These zones are further described by the anticipated character and form, with the highest intensities in the center zone, transitioning down towards the edge of the CBC to provide a buffer to the surrounding neighborhoods. The vision plan recommends the delivery of a public open space as a community benefit as part of a redevelopment in the center zone. These images were selected by the community during the visioning process, depicting the preferences for the types of open space desired in the CBC. You'll see the graphics demonstrate opportunities for public gathering, community gathering space, opportunities for seating and meeting with neighbors, and those sorts of opportunities. The draft plan was developed using the vision plan as its starting point. There are a few key takeaways from the draft plan. The new draft plan recognizes the importance of maintaining existing neighborhoods by focusing redevelopment towards the center of the CBC. It introduces new opportunities for residential use. It sets the framework for a signature redevelopment and a public open space in the center part of downtown. It includes guidance for creating places for people, places that are engaging for pedestrians and that can serve as a catalyst for revitalization and for economic development. And finally, the draft plan adds flexibility related to use and intensity within defined parameters by recommending a form-based approach for the center of the CBC. That means that review of development proposals would be guided by three main elements, including an overall development cap, height, and design. Redevelopment is focused towards the center of the CBC. The draft plan brings forward this concept to include redevelopment opportunities in both the center and the general zones. The edge zone would remain as currently planned. The 10-year market assessment was used to inform the draft plan, which proposes to add residential uses to the CBC with the addition of approximately 1,600 residential units, more than the current plan, as well as a decrease in approximately 200,000 square feet of non-residential use. Can we go to the next slide, please? The center zone is where a mix of uses is encouraged to promote activity throughout the day and where the envisioned focal point central public open space would be located. The center zone is where the tallest buildings would be located and would be limited to this zone, with a maximum height of 7 stories. The draft plan offers an incentive in the form of additional height of up to 10 stories for one 4 to 6 acre site if a public open space is provided, which was identified as a priority from the community workshops. Once this 4 to 6 acre site is consolidated and the project provides the park, there's not another opportunity for that bonus height available in the plan. Buildings are envisioned to be located close to the street, and active ground floor uses are recommended to make the area more pleasing for pedestrians. Underground or structured parking is encouraged with redevelopment in the center zone. However, some surface parking in front of buildings may be appropriate. The photo in the upper right and the rendering on the lower right are examples of the type of development that we may see in the center zone. The general zone is planned as a transition from the center to the edge zone. Redevelopment in this area is envisioned as low to mid-rise mixed-use development with building heights up to 5 stories. Active ground floor uses would also be appropriate for new development in this area. The top photograph and the rendering below are examples of the type of development that we may see in the general zone under the draft plan, such as neighborhood serving retail and residential uses. Parking supporting neighborhood serving retail should be provided. The edge zone is envisioned to remain as currently planned and will provide a buffer between the general zone and the surrounding residential neighborhoods outside of the CBC. It is primarily comprised of residential uses, with some communities serving retail, commercial, and institutional uses, including Franklin Sherman Elementary School. A signature urban park space in the center zone is a major feature of the parks concept for the CBC. As I mentioned, a single consolidated site is expected to provide an urban park as a condition for additional height. The signature urban park can be located anywhere in the green hatched area shown here on this map. The park should be accessible to the public and provide opportunities for both passive and active recreation activities and space for community gatherings. In addition to the signature park, the plan recommends a network of well-distributed and connected smaller urban park spaces. The plan includes guidance for creating places that are encouraging for pedestrians and as a catalyst for revitalization and economic development. The draft plan provides guidance for streetscape design, which is one of those components. And I'd like to introduce Zach Pyle with the Department of Planning and Development, who will review the draft concepts for streetscapes included in the draft plan.
Hello, I'm Zach Pyle. We developed special streetscapes for McLean based on the type of street in order to create an inviting experience for all users. A streetscape is made up of the visual elements of a street, including the adjoining buildings, street furniture, trees, and open spaces that combine to form the street's character. It provides space for building zones where outdoor cafes, markets, or small parks can be programmed, as well as amenities to serve vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. Also shown here, the cross-section shows the components of a street and its dimensions and how streets could be designed in order to accommodate all intended travel modes. And those include vehicles, transit, pedestrians, and bicyclists. Providing for all of these travel modes improves connectivity between neighborhoods and businesses throughout the CBC. These improvements can be achieved through either redevelopment or public capital projects. Here's an illustration of the different types of proposed streets within the McLean CBC. In the next few slides, we'll go over the character of the proposed street types. Here, this is the proposed avenue. In the avenue type street, the cross-section shows 4 vehicular travel lanes, a pedestrian and bicycle pathway on both sides of the street, as well as corresponding building zones, areas where cafes, outdoor markets, or small parks could be added. An example of the proposed avenue type is Old Dominion. The rendering to the right shows how all the proposed streetscape amenities would work together to allow for these outdoor spaces along the building zone. And additionally, other streetscape elements such as street lights, benches, and pavement materials are illustrated here. Once the plan is adopted, the current McLean design guidelines will be updated to show more specific examples of materials and amenity choices. This example shows a local street, which is proposed for Elm Street. It is very similar to the avenue in that it provides the same areas for the building zone, a pedestrian and bicycle pathway, and other streetscape amenities. This example also provides for on-street parking where possible. The image to the right shows a similar treatment in the neighborhood. The photo shows how similar conditions envisioned in this area could be something that would happen along local streets within McLean. And now back to you, Leanna.
Thank you, Zach. When drafting the plan components for the center and general zones, one of the goals was for the plan to allow for flexibility for redevelopment proposals to respond to the market, rather than prescribing specific uses for specific properties. The plan offers additional opportunity for residential use as well, which is not currently in the plan except for a few specific areas. To allow for that flexibility, a form-based plan approach is used in the draft plan for the center and the general zones. The components of the form-based plan include a total development potential cap, which is basically a pool of development potential for the CBC, described as a total number of units and a total amount of non-residential square feet. Review of projects are guided by form, and the components of that would include height and design guidance, such as recommendations for site design and streetscapes, as Zach just discussed. The maximum development potential cap is one of the components of the form-based plan, and the draft plan includes the development cap shown on the right here. The adopted comprehensive plan development potential is shown on the left. This is one of the parameters for development in a form-based plan. The vision plan provided a market assessment of demand for 10 years, including for residential use, and that potential was included here and expanded to consider the longer-term planning horizon for the comprehensive plan, which looks 20 years and beyond. Implementation of the plan is not anticipated to occur all at once, as it is implemented through rezoning proposals that come forward from property owners. You will see here with the draft plan a higher ratio of residential use to non-residential use than in the current plan. Next slide, please. Another component of the form-based plan is the height map, shown here. In gray is the center zone, which is planned for the tallest heights and a maximum height of 7 stories. The bonus height area of up to 10 stories is identified in the hatched gray area in the center of the center zone. And within that area, the smaller 4 to 6 acre area, additional height would be allowed with provision of that public park. The pink area shows the general zone with a maximum height of 5 stories, and the yellow shows the edge zone, which we're bringing forward the adopted comprehensive plan recommendations with generally a maximum height of 3 stories. Height is expressed in stories in the draft map, in the draft plan, to allow for flexibility when implementing different uses that may have different floor-to-floor height measurements. County policy does allow for bonus units related to workforce and affordable housing. The plan as currently drafted would allow for consideration of additional height to accommodate units provided under that policy. The impacts to public facilities are reviewed during the planning process, comparing the current adopted comprehensive plan to the new proposed draft plan. And if recommended, mitigation strategies are included in the draft plan. There are 2 public libraries within close proximity to the CBC, Valley Madison and the Tysons Pemmant Regional Library. These libraries will be able to serve the additional residents that could result from the new plan. The CBC is served by the McLean District Police Station, and a new district police station is already planned for Tysons in response to the projected growth for the area. Emergency and other fire and rescue services are primarily provided by the McLean Fire and Rescue Station 1 located in the CBC, which can support the additional potential growth. Several other fire and rescue stations provide service to the CBC as well, including in Tysons and the Dunmoring Fire Station. There are planned upgrades to the wastewater service in the area not generated by the proposed plan change that will accommodate the proposed growth. The existing Fairfax water facilities are adequate to meet the increase in demand that could result from new development. The majority of the existing public parks that serve the community are located outside of the CBC and include McLean Central Park, Lewinsville Park, Salona Park, and Bryn Mawr Park. The urban parks framework in the policy plan provides guidance and standards to estimate park needs for 5 types of urban parks to accommodate a broad spectrum of activities. During the development review process, recommendations for both urban parks and other park needs are identified and provided often through combinations of on-site improvements, new facilities, or funding improvements at existing parks. The parks concept also recommends a connected network of public park spaces, including the signature park in the center zone. The McLean CBC is served by 4 public schools: Franklin Sherman Elementary and Kent Gardens Elementary, Longfellow Middle School, and McLean High School. During a planning study, school staff will provide a projected student yield based on a countywide student ratio formula. Information about school capacity, student membership, and a 5-year student membership projection is also provided. The planning horizon for the comprehensive plan is well beyond that 5-year timeframe, and the timing of implementation of recommendations is unknown. A system of monitoring is in place to track the implementation and monitor needs. Fairfax County Public Schools staff reviews individual development applications and provides data on school capacity and projections with a review of each of those applications. In addition, the school's capital improvement program is updated annually with new information. The draft plan includes strategies to consider, if needed, to ensure that any improvements are phased with new development. Heritage resources in the McLean CBC included in the county's inventory of historic sites include the McLean Baptist Church, Sears Roebuck House on Chain Bridge Road, and the former McLean Volunteer Fire Station shown here. During planning studies, staff performs windshield surveys to identify potential heritage resources, and in this case, completed a windshield survey to identify resources related to the area's 20th century residential and commercial history to inform future opportunities for research about those properties. The policy plan environment element provides objectives and policies related to environmental resources, such as environmental quality corridors and tree preservation. These all apply in the review of development proposals for McLean. In addition, current countywide policy calls for the protection of surface and groundwater resources and includes guidance for stormwater management. There is a significant amount of impervious surface in the McLean CBC, and the new draft plan provides an opportunity for redevelopment to reduce that amount of impervious surface and to improve runoff and address flooding and support recent county investments to improve the stream health in the McLean area. In addition, the plan brings forward green building practices and recommendations for those, as well as for noise sensitive uses, consistent with our policy plan recommendations. I'd like to introduce next Zach Cromwell from our Fairfax County Department of Transportation to review the transportation planning and analysis for the study.
Thank you, Leanna, and good morning. Transportation is an important part of any comprehensive plan. The McLean Plan describes a vision of how the transportation network should function, which means of travel should be prioritized where, and specific infrastructure improvements to make it happen. The new draft plan for McLean maps out an updated transportation vision for McLean and would be able to accommodate the changes in transportation demand caused by the proposed land uses. We studied future transportation conditions for vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and transit, and found that the draft plan would maintain or improve conditions for each mode. Acceptable vehicle traffic operations would be maintained with the help of several road improvements. Bicycle and pedestrian networks would be more connected, more complete, and more comfortable with the addition of new sidewalks and trails that you all saw in the streetscape slides. And bus service would be unchanged, which is typical for plan amendments. And it's important to remember that implementation would be gradual. Our transportation analysis predicts that the draft plan land uses would create slightly different travel demand patterns compared to the current plan. There should be a slight increase in overall rush hour trips and a shift towards classic commuting trips by new residents. So that's out of the CBC in the morning and then back in the evening. Our planners also used a travel demand model to forecast regional background traffic increases from trips that don't start or end in McLean. And those changes in demand are expected whether or not land use in McLean changes. The traffic forecasts were then fed into a traffic model that estimates delay. This map shows that output, the rough average amount of time that drivers will wait at intersections during rush hour. Low delay intersections are green, planned signalized intersections are shown as circles, and stop controlled intersections are shown as squares. This graphic was submitted to the Virginia Department of Transportation, VDOT, as part of our Transportation Impact Analysis Report, which was approved in June. And it shows that intersections under the draft plan should continue to operate at an acceptable level, comparable to modeled future conditions under the current comprehensive plan. Several road improvements are recommended in the draft plan to achieve those operations. One example is the Elm Street cul-de-sac, which is called out with an arrow in the map, which should improve both operations and safety compared to the existing five-way intersection. There are also some other more detailed recommendations that were included in the transportation impact analysis submitted to VDOT, but not in the draft plan itself, like adding 3 new traffic signals at existing stop controlled intersections to reduce delay. And again, these improvements would be built over time as they're needed and most likely through redevelopment. The draft plan transportation map also recommends improvements for pedestrians and cyclists, including sidewalks, more walkable streetscapes, and trails, especially on Old Dominion Drive, Chainbridge Road, Beverly Road, and Elm Street, but also on other local streets. These changes would improve individual streets as well as the overall pedestrian and bicycle networks, which currently have some gaps and substandard facilities. The bike network would also be improved. This map shows bike routes comfortable for a casual mainstream cyclist in blue and other routes in red. And CBC areas with high connectivity are in dark green, which is a significant improvement over existing conditions and reflects connectivity both within the CBC and to neighborhoods outside it. The biggest reason for that change in connectivity is that the draft plan would separate bikes from vehicle traffic on Old Dominion Drive and Chainbridge Road and take those roads from being barriers for cyclists to actually being important bike routes for traveling in and out of the CBC. And last but not least, 5 bus routes currently serve the McLean CBC, including Fairfax Connector Route 721 and WMATA routes 23A, 23T, and 15K shown on the map. And Connector Route 722, which was just added in August and isn't shown on the map. These routes connect the CBC to the McLean Metro Station and other destinations in the region. No changes to transit facilities or service are proposed, but if transit demand in McLean changes, the connector and WMATA would conduct their own planning process before making service changes.
Great, thank you, Zach, and thank you to the rest of the presenters. I'd like to turn it back over to
Tim. I have more slides.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, thanks. I just have 2 brief slides to talk about process, and I know this has been was covered a little bit earlier. The timeline of where we are with the study, we're right here in the middle, the task force meetings and drafting the plan. And as was mentioned before, the study, we're anticipating a few more task force meetings and then anticipate completing the study in the first quarter of next year. That would mean publication of a staff report, task force report, staff report, and then public hearings before both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, which have not yet been scheduled. Thank you for your time. Right here, we have our contact information. Our email address for comments is dpzmcleancbc@fairfaxcounty.gov. We also have our website address listed here, which I know many of you use to get to this meeting, the fairfaxcounty.gov and McLean CBC. And as the supervisor mentioned, we have planned for Monday, November 16th, an opportunity for Q&A with staff. We will have links posted on the website next week as to how to access that, and we do plan to hold additional sessions if needed. That would be between 12:30 and 1:30 on Monday, November 16th. The next task force meeting is scheduled for that same day in the evening at 6:30. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Leanna. I'd like to turn things back over to the task force chair, Kim Dorgan, who will introduce a few task force members, and he'll provide a few brief remarks before we go to questions. Kim?
Great, thank you, Tim. So I've asked a couple of our task force members represent a variety of different organizations to give their perspective on the plan that we have in front of us today. Let's start with Rob Jackson. Rob is the current president of the McLean Citizens Association and been a longtime member of MCA, as also was the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Committee of the MCA. So turn it over to you, Rob, for any comments you'd like to make.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Yes, I'm Rob Jackson. I'm currently president of the McLean Citizens Association, and when I started this process, I was chair of our Planning and Zoning Committee. I want to make it clear to everyone that the MCA does not yet have a position on the plan. Our committees are looking at it. We may submit some comments after our meeting on November 18th. But again, keep in mind that the plan isn't final until the plan is final. So some things may change, and we won't have a final position until the plan is final and ready to go to the county. We have 2 members on the 2 votes out of the 20 on the task force. Everyone on the task force has been trying to come up with a better plan. I think everyone would agree that the existing plan has not worked well. It hasn't resulted in much development, and we're looking for something that hits the sweet spot, provides sufficient incentives for development while protecting important community needs and ensuring that the infrastructure to support a new CBC is available. And I look forward to looking at working on the rest of the task force and hearing what folks have to say. Thank you.
Winnie is a longtime member of the McLean Planning Commission, and she was also past president of that organization. But I've asked for Winnie to talk today as president of the Stoneley Homeowners Association, which is a homeowners association that borders our CBC. So obviously directly impacted by what we do with the CBC. Winnie?
Thank you, Kim and Supervisor Faust. I live on the fringe of the CBC and with several others represent surrounding citizens. The task force has had discussion, has had some votes, and has had many interactions with county staff to provide us with the necessary information to move forward. There are many, many things in the plan that I support. The proposed 4 planning areas, central, edge, and bonus, etc., compare very favorably with the current 90 some we have where each individual parcel is separate. I looked for more flexible uses of these properties as a result. I certainly support the stormwater management proposals, and I support the better and safer sidewalks and bike paths that have been proposed along what you just heard about. McLean is a suburban community which serves a large geographical area with automotive services, offices, financial institutions, and retail. It's not quite as urbanized in the context of Tyson's or downtown DC, and we love it. Now, we all want it to look a little better and to be a little more active. But based on task force discussions and on the current draft plan, which we all know is still a draft, I suggest that McLean citizens and their groups consider density, both in terms of the height, its consequences on traffic, schools, for example, may be good, but it's something that we should be thinking about. We need to be sure we have adequate, free, and safe parking in the front of or in the back of new constructions, as I've heard discussed. And of course, my favorite here is discourage uses. I think we should be able to have drive-through banking, automotive services throughout the CBC, although I understand there's reasons for not doing that. Now is the time, you citizens, this is the time in the process that we want to hear from you, and we want you to make your thoughts known to all of us so that we're careful as we move forward. I want to thank the county staff because they have answered all my questions, dumb or intelligent, in a timely and very courteous manner, and they have been very available to all of us on the task force. So if you have questions, I would not hesitate to propose them and ask them. You will get courteous and good and timely answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie. And finally, I'd like to ask Rich Salopek to address the group as well. Rich is the current president of the McLean Planning Commission, and he's been a longtime member of that organization as well, and very involved in our community. So, Rich, turn to you.
Yes, thank you, Kim. Nice to be here today. As you all know, the McLean Planning Committee is responsible for evaluating land use proposals in the McLean CBC, and we're comprised of 4 constituent groups: the McLean Citizens Association, neighboring citizen associations, the McLean Chamber of Commerce, and landowners within the CBC. And so we're a collective of people who advise the Dranesville District Supervisor on how we think about various proposals. And so we have quite a few members on the task force. And I think overall it's been pretty good. As everyone on the task force knows, it's not been easy at times and we get in the weeds a lot, but I think that's a worthwhile endeavor, and good things take time to create. So, we've at all of our monthly meetings of the committee, we spend quite a bit of time evaluating virtually every line of the proposed language. And we continue to look forward to working with everybody to finalize the language. There's quite a diversity of opinion on the McLean Planning Committee about things. So that has not necessarily been easy either, trying to get consensus. But nonetheless, I personally believe that the concept behind the plan is very good and will be a massive improvement over what we have now, which is essentially an ad hoc process that doesn't really result in plan development in a way that will create a cohesive downtown. And I do think that the idea of concentrating larger development within a zone of the downtown that will not impact adjacent residential neighborhoods is a very sound strategy. And I think it will, if the plan develops the way we all hope, I think it will make a really great, livable, walkable downtown that people will be very proud of. So, that's what I would say. And just to also echo Winnie and Rob's comments, we have also not officially taken a position on the plan yet, but that's okay because it's not done yet. So we just continue to work, and at some point we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. I want to take a moment. I think Winnie was most appropriate in thanking the county staff for all of their work. So as I talked at the beginning about the 2.5 years that we've been working on this, staff planning was prior to that. And as we show up and do our oftentimes very long meetings, and as Rich was saying, very detailed meetings about the minutest of details, we had staff there who anticipated each question, prepared all the materials, spent a lot of time, and appreciate your work very much, staff. The product is much better because of all the work that you put into it, and thank you for that. I also want to focus on, again, the plan as we've created it and drafted it. So to think about the density of downtown occurring within, as you saw one of the slides, area at the center of town. This should keep, again, we're trying to encourage a walkable, denser downtown so people don't have to get in their cars to go to a grocery store, to the drugstore, to get something to eat, or simply go for a walk or a bike ride. And hoping by creating an area that should not impact the neighborhoods surrounding the CBC, that we have succeeded in accomplishing that goal. I think also we have spent a lot of time going back over issues, parking and traffic. I know those are primary concerns of our residents, particularly in the surrounding areas. But if you see areas that you are still concerned about, or you want to raise, just raise your concerns. By all means, we want to hear from you, and this is a great opportunity. So again, thank you all for participating today in the call from the public, and I'll turn it back over to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you to the rest of the task force. Now, before we open up for questions, we have about an hour for the Q&A session. I want to remind everybody to please use the Q&A function that's located on the right side of your screen. Type your question for the moderator to read out loud. If you do not see the Q&A box, you may have to click on the icon with the 3 dots on the lower right corner of your screen. When typing a question, please be sure to direct it to all panelists. For people calling into the meeting, you may hit *3 to raise your hand and ask a question. I will call your name and unmute your microphone, at which point you will ask your question and hit *3 again to lower your hand. Again, please do not use the chat feature to comment or ask questions, as this is intended for technical support only. As a final note, please keep in mind that we have many members of the community attending today's meeting. We would like to hear from as many of you as time allows. With that in mind, please be respectful of others when asking your questions and try to limit speaking time to 1 or 2 minutes. If time runs out, any questions that have not been addressed will be saved as part of the record, and responses to all questions will be posted online. So with that, I'll go to the first question that's in the Q&A box. This question comes from Sarah, and she asks, in the residential loop behind the McLean office park, Y Street, we are particularly concerned about the proposal which would allow for a doubling of building height, inconsistent with the goals of low impact for residential areas. Do we have staff?
Can we get a map? I think let's go to a map so people can.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna.
Yeah.
This is the McLean Professional Park, located right below the Racket Club on Chambers Road.
Leanne, you're on mute. Leanna.
Sorry about that. The height guidance, we have our height map that includes the maximum number of stories that could be considered in our zones. And so I think we're looking at general zone here with a transition to edge. We do have language in the plan that speaks to having careful transitions in situations like this as well. These heights demonstrate a maximum number of stories. And we also have guidance that would be considered in terms of step backs and transitions to adjacent land uses as well. I don't know if there's any, if that's helpful, or Liz, if you've got anything to add about our height guidance.
Yeah. So while they're permitted the height in the zone that we show, there is a sensitivity to the surrounding context and, where it makes sense, tapering to less dense uses. So that's something that would be looked at with any zoning application.
Great, thank you both. Sarah, I see you have a few more questions, but I'm just going to go to the next person to give everybody an opportunity. John asks, the COVID crisis has raised questions about the future of commercial office and retail space, close quarters residential development, and mass transit. The plan is based on pre-COVID concepts and conditions. How is the new reality being accounted for?
I'll take a stab. So as you may have heard, the vision plan was based in market realities. There was a market assessment, and in that they actually showed very little future demand for additional office or retail. It's really more replacement of those uses, as you have some older style office buildings, and so it just probably be replacement with newer office buildings that are like doctors' offices and that sort of thing. So while you're correct that the COVID pandemic is definitely affecting right now office and retail uses, I actually I'm not concerned for this plan because the majority of the additional newly planned uses is for residential, which we think will remain strong. I hope that answers it.
I might also add, this is Leanna, the approach that is included in the draft plan allows for flexibility in terms of use. So the plan for the center and general zones does not prescribe a particular use for a particular property. So in that sense, I think this plan can react to potential changes to allow for flexibility for property owners to bring forward proposals for uses that the market that would be supported by the market without the need for evaluating a plan change. The flexibility is sort of built in there to accommodate that.
Great. The next question I have is from Sonia. She asks, I find that Fairfax County in general does not have wide enough sidewalks to meet what I would call urban ecosystem. How wide are the planned sidewalks? Would they consider widening sidewalks to the same standards used in Clarendon or Crystal City?
So this is a little bit of background. So the VDOT standard width for sidewalks is 5 feet. And there are a lot of sidewalks in Fairfax County that were built to an older standard and are not 5 feet. But most of the streetscape recommendations that we've made for McLean would be wider than that 5 foot minimum. And I think it's worth also considering the building zone. In a lot of instances, will provide additional space that people can walk in. So I'm not sure exactly what dimensions they have in Clarendon. But we think that the sidewalk widths we've planned should be adequate and will be wider than you're most likely used to in Fairfax County.
This is Liz Hay. Can we go to the streetscape slide? Yeah, so, go back. So you are correct that the existing pedestrian facilities, sometimes you don't even have you don't meet the current VDOT standard of a 5 foot sidewalk. So the plan is, particularly on Chain Bridge and Old Dominion Drive, to have much wider shared facilities that could accommodate both pedestrians and cyclists. And then the adjacent building zone, we have minimums, but it could also be expanded for outdoor cafes, and seating areas can bleed into pocket parks from adjacent uses. So I think the real exciting thing is going forward, this is going to create a much more inviting pedestrian experience than what you have now, and it will better accommodate more modes of transportation.
And just to note, the specific figure that we have as the minimum is 6 feet.
Okay, and the next question kind of tags along with that one. This is from Marianne, who says, sounds like there will be many sidewalks shared by both pedestrians and cyclists, and she's concerned that might be dangerous. So if we can talk about maybe the mixing of the two modes.
Yeah, so I think that the vision that we had for the avenue was to achieve separation, but for the other street type, we did have a shared facility, and I think the hope there was that it would not really be a high speed through route, but that it would be more slow. People are there because they're visiting, a land use on those streets, and that's a model that does exist in some more urban areas and has been successful.
Yeah, and if this is Liz Haig, if I could add, what you're seeing here is a illustration of how Old Dominion could look. So what you can't maybe tell is that there will be signs sort of saying what's for pedestrians and what's for bicyclists. Obviously, we're not going to have, strong enforcement. The idea is that these spaces can flex somewhat to account for demand, whether there's more pedestrians out for some kind of activity. But in general, and if we could go back to the map that shows the categories of street types. So if you see there, the big green line is Old Dominion, and the gold orangey line is Chain Bridge. And those are going to be the major, I would say, traveling routes for bicyclists. So I think the other streets, there'll be less traffic on them. They'll disperse the commuter, bike traffics into the CBC. So I think there'll be less chance for conflicts, I guess, is where I'm going. Hope that addresses it.
Okay, great. We had another question from Veronica about the same subject, so I think you all answered that. We have one from Nash now that asks, why not a focus on sustainability? So if we have someone who can talk about sustainability.
Hi, this is Leanna. The draft plan includes updated guidance related to the environment, including the stormwater guidance that we reviewed, and the policy plan portion of the comprehensive plan, and those policies would apply to development proposals here in terms of green building expectations and looking towards energy conservation and those sorts of details. I was going to maybe ask Joe if he had a few words maybe to address how that works, how that would work with development review in terms of that focus.
Certainly, yes. This is Joe Gorney, also from the Planning Division. Yeah, in terms of sustainability, the policy plan provides most of the guidance. So for residential uses of various densities, the policy plan is fairly clear of what is expected for all parts of the county, whether they're in McLean or in any of the other activity centers throughout the county. So whenever we review any of these projects, we don't just look at the McLean language, we would also look at the policy plan language. And again, it's got that consistency no matter where you are and no matter what the density, it already speaks to that. And what we wanted to do with McLean was to address the issues that might be germane here. So any sort of environmentally focused language would speak to that issue. In this case, flooding was identified as an issue. So some of the draft language would speak to that and possibilities for rectifying those sort of situations and improving the conditions. But again, we would like to only add the language here that would be specific to McLean in general. And the other language we feel is already included in the policy plan.
Okay, great, thank you. We're going to go to the phones real quick. We have Malcolm Butler. You have your hand raised. I will unmute you and you can ask a question.
Malcolm, you're unmuted. Can you hear us?
Okay, Malcolm may have stepped away. We'll go to S. Gamble next. S. Gamble, we're going to unmute you.
I don't have.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, I live in downtown McLean, and I and many of our neighbors are looking forward to a comp plan with sensible development opportunities to improve our community. I'd like to echo the appreciation others have mentioned of the county staff. You all have done a wonderful job of answering all our questions. We are, however, concerned with the shift from a suburban sense of place to a more urban infrastructure. For example, we noticed in the presentation that the number of new residential units being developed was based on the current comp plan. In actuality, what's built, I think you've shown as being 1,279 residential units. Based on the street sense analysis provided by Supervisor Faust in December, it showed that the CBC could reasonably grow to 2,900 residential units, which it appeared to be based on facts and analysis. However, Supervisor Faust's task force has since increased this density to over 3,850 units. So that's an additional 2,600 rather than the, I think, roughly 1,600 that you had showed. So to help visualize what this means, an increase of 2,600 new residential units would be comparable to about 20 new Signet condos or 10 new McLean houses or somewhere in between. So our comment, and you don't have to answer it now, we can just submit it, but our comment is why not stay with the street sense recommended number of total residential units of 2,900? It just seems that the 3,850, which is a huge infrastructure, it's also approximately 6,000 to 7,000 additional residents within the CBC that would put stress on our schools and roads and other parts of the infrastructure. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you, Sharon. I just and if there's anyone in the meeting that's kind of not familiar with the progression, just for background, when we do have about 1,250 existing residential units in the CBC, with planning studies, we look at the difference between what could occur under the current adopted plan and a new plan. So you're correct. There's some unbuilt development potential there in terms of the number of residential units today, in terms of what you see today and what could occur under the current plan. And the vision plan used a 10-year market assessment in terms of residential demand expected. So that has been incorporated here as well. And you're correct. We have then taken that and gone to a longer planning horizon. I just wanted to provide that background in case others are not familiar with that progression.
Thank you, Leanna. We're going to go to Lindsay Kelly next. Lindsay, we'll unmute you and you can ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, thanks for putting this together. I recently, with my fiance, purchased a property at the new Toll Brothers complex in Union Park. So excited to become a more permanent McLean resident. So I wasn't able to make the first part of this event, so I wasn't sure if you've already addressed this, but was curious about kind of the timeline for when you see this being rolled out, as well as like any phases within that timeline. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. The planning study timeframe shown here, we're reviewing a draft plan now with you all, and we anticipate a few more task force meetings, and then our schedule would bring us to public hearings in the first quarter of 2021. That's for the update to the comprehensive plan. Implementation of the comprehensive plan recommendations, the timing of that is unknown because how the plan is implemented is that property owners would bring forward proposals to implement the plan on their time frame. So in terms of there's not a phase proposed in the comprehensive plan, but just in terms of updating the new plan guidance, timeline for that is in the next couple of months, the first quarter of next year. And then implementation of the recommendations is dependent on property owners bringing forward rezoning applications to implement those recommendations.
And if I might also jump in on this one, to set expectations. So once we have this approved by the County Board of Supervisors, we really need to essentially wait for developers to look at this product and decide whether or not there's enough incentive for them to invest in McLean. And we're really hoping to attract that investment, that we've created enough opportunity for them to, both make money for them and yet give back to the community in terms of the parks or the wider sidewalks or the other items that we're looking for. And when we have a number of challenges ahead of us, a lot of our property owners have very small properties. So in order to do anything sort of substantial, you'll need a number of property owners to get together and agree on a project. And as you might imagine, that will take time. So to make sure our expectations and a time horizon are set and reasonable, unfortunately, that we will have some announced interest in investing in McLean. We obviously think that we're worthy of the investment, but again, that will take time once this proposal is finally approved through the county.
Thank you, Kim. Before I go back to the written questions, I'll check in with Malcolm Butler again. Malcolm, your mic is unmuted. You can ask the question.
I don't know how to play this.
You're on, Malcolm.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Wow, sorry, I've been trying to figure out how to play this game and I haven't quite mastered WebEx yet. Oh, my question was a little bit like the one that was just offered. It's just a simple question of who is responsible for mobilizing the developers and the investment money that's going to have to come in to make this thing work.
The comprehensive plan provides guidance for future development for the CBC. And one of the goals of this plan was to add some flexibility as hopefully an incentive for some of this redevelopment to occur, outlined as we have in the plan with the community vision included. So in terms of implementation, that is dependent on the property owners to come forward. The new plan does provide more flexibility in terms of uses with the introduction of residential use, as well as flexibility in terms of not assigning uses to particular properties as well. So the reason for that is to one of the reasons for that is to hopefully provide some incentive for proposals to come forward as well.
Leanna, this is Liz, if I could jump back on. So yes, the plan tries to create a positive framework for developers to come forward. I wanted to share, and this is separate from this comprehensive planning effort, but the county has been working on a program which it recently approved just last month, September 15th, for incentivizing consolidation of parcels. It's called the Economic Incentive Program. And we will be, McLean is one of the eligible areas, and we will be promoting that program with property owners. And we think combined with this new flexible plan that lays out a more complete vision for McLean, along with this financial incentive of a possible tax abatement for consolidating and redeveloping, could work together and actually stimulate some additional investment. So we're we're very, gung-ho about it. And we think that this timing with the comprehensive plan amendment going forward could be just the spark that we need.
Kim, this is John Oldfelder. I think the bottom line is that it's done in the marketplace. But you just heard the one program that the county can use to try to help goose the marketplace along. And I think that would be very helpful. This plan goes into effect once the board votes on it, which will be sometime in the first quarter of next year. So any future development after that will be subject to the new plan. And hopefully there are developers and landowners who are watching this work closely and already thinking about some of the things they might be able to do under the new plan that they couldn't do or didn't want to do under the old plan.
Okay, we're going to go back over to the Q&A box for some questions. Just a reminder, if you do have your hand raised and you've already asked your question, you don't have a follow-up, please hit the hand icon again to lower it. Or if you're over the phone, it's *3 to lower it. Okay. We'll go back to the Q&A now. All right, we have a question from Ghazal. And he asks, edge zone 1 through 3. I live behind Total Wine and am first house against the edge zone. You said it would stay the same, but I don't believe it's currently zoned for 3 stories. Please confirm.
The edge zone, that's correct. The edge zone shown in yellow here, the draft plan brings forward the existing comprehensive plan recommendations for that area. The height map, this height map brings forward the recommendations from the vision plan in terms of maximum numbers of maximum heights. But the edge zone, although generally on the height map is reflected as 3 stories, the flexibility for new development is focused on the center and general zones. And so the current plan recommendations for the edge zone will be brought forward. So that area is not incentivized for the new development. So that's correct.
The next question we have is from Thomas, who says the Signet has existing restaurant space of 4,500 square footage, which is still vacant after 1+ years. The increase of residential use over retail use in the plan, is that going to attract enough retail business to serve McLean residents adequately?
We believe so. And I think, I don't think we're looking to diminish the amount of retail. It may take on a different form. It may go from a freestanding structure into a ground floor of a structure. But part of that is we know retail doesn't succeed everywhere. It has locational requirements. So we not be looking for it to line every square inch of the ground floor, but it's got to be facing on streets and things to be successful. And so, there are other ways to activate the ground floor with amenities for residents in the building, but making that visible. So there's a lot of strategies, but I think we're not looking to diminish the amount of retail. It just may take a different form.
Okay, next question is from Bo. He's asked, has staff and the panel considered vacancy rates for office, retail, and residential property within McLean and surrounding communities as it sought to add density? Are we adding supply where it isn't needed?
Hi, this is Liz again. So that was the rationale behind doing the market assessment. And you can only go out so far or it doesn't work. So we went out about 10 years to see what the demand was. And there, wasn't a strong demand for additional office and retail uses. And so this plan is based in market reality. It reflects what we think reasonably the McLean area can attract. And certainly in the next 10 years, and then we've added a little bit for the 20-year time frame. So it was all grounded in an assessment of the market.
Thank you, Liz. I'm going to jump to a question about Fairfax County Public Schools. This comes from David. He says, because of FCPS policy for AAP Level 4 services, about a third of students in the FSES district actually go to Haycock starting in 3rd grade. Why is Haycock not considered to serve the CBC and included when assessing capacity issues?
I can take this one. This is Pranita from Fairfax County Public Schools. So just to answer to give you a little more information about AAP, we have AAP boundaries where students are assigned based on where they're residing. We have a lot of students transferring. If the school that they're assigned to is not an AAP center. With regards to Haycock, when we analyze upcoming residential developments or comprehensive plans, we look at typically traditional school boundaries at the ES, MS, and HS level. One of the reasons why we don't necessarily consider we note in our analysis memo about AP centers is because these are program plannings. Boundaries are evaluated every year, programs are evaluated every year. So programs may change. For Haycock Elementary School specifically, it's not just Kent Gardens or Franklin Sherman that we're looking at. There are other elementary schools that feed into Haycock for AP. So currently there are program conversations that are ongoing for AP local level 4 expansions to try and have AP level AP services at schools which are not centers. So we're trying to have that conversation to analyze where we can expand, what are the needs, where there's a demand, and how we can meet those. And these conversations happen every year. So it can be updated annually. So that's the reason why Haycock is not specifically added in our analysis at this point.
Great, thank you, Pranita. We have another question related to schools. This comes from Leo. The plan envisions adding hundreds of new students to the schools. Has this been vetted with the parents and administration of Franklin Sherman Elementary School? How many trailers will need to be added?
Thank you for the question. So we evaluate any impacts on membership and capacity with regards to upcoming residential development every year. So we work with the county very closely. We track and monitor timelines of developments, when they're going to be open up for residents to move in and how they would be impacting schools. So this information is updated every year in our capital improvement program, where as and when information for residential developments is available. So with regards to Franklin Sherman specifically, there are currently no plans to add trailers in our capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2021-25. That's from last year. We did identify that the school was at a 83% capacity, and that's included in our analysis memo. So we have certain thresholds for capacity, and at an 83%, we identified that the school has sufficient capacity. It has a capacity surplus. So there is currently no need identified for trailers. At the same time, we also identify potential solutions if there's an impact from upcoming development. It's not one specific solution, but there are multiple solutions that we would look at. And again, this is done every year. So as and when residential information is available, we would take that into an analysis to identify any impacts that may be on schools and how we can offset it.
Okay, we're going to move on to some transportation related questions now. So this one comes from Jennifer. Similar communities as proposed, like Merrifield, Boston, have excessive traffic. Many drive around in circles looking for street parking in an effort to avoid underground/above ground structured parking. How will the new plan avoid this problem?
Hello, this is Bob Pecora with Fairfax County Department of Transportation. When we did the analysis for the traffic here, traffic generated with the new residential and non-residential uses, we found that the existing street system will still suffice and be accessible to everyone. So we're not proposing new streets. We're not widening the streets or anything like that. The surface parking or structured parking as it comes with development is may happen with when the developments come in, but the streets that we're showing that are existing, we're not looking at any changes to that. So McLean is still a well-serviced like network of streets. So there's relatively small blocks, and you can still travel around McLean without any problems. Most of the existing buildings either have surface parking now, or they have some kind of a small structured parking or something like that. So as development occurs, we'll still be with the rezoning cases that come in, they'll be asked to also update their traffic impact analysis or operations analysis for that project. So as a development occurs, we'll still be assessing transportation and street traffic demand on the road network. So hopefully that's answers your question.
Thank you, Bob. I think we're going to keep it with transportation. We have another question from Robert. It says, currently there's considerable morning and evening rush hour congestion at the Beverly/Elm/Old Dominion intersections. What would be done to avoid making the situation worse with increased development in the central business area?
Okay, so Bob Pecora again with FCDOT. On those intersections at Beverly and Old Dominion and Cambridge Road, as we did the analysis for, you're experiencing congestion today. Or if you're high rush hour volume at these intersections, we don't have any specific plan recommendations for the moment, but as we evaluate development and see that there's things that we can do at those intersections, we can adjust signal timing. If there is excessive, if you think that the excessive traffic is now, you can please reach out to me or through the website afterwards, and I'll work with you to see what we can do to see if we can change the signal timings with VDOT now, or just have some kind of immediate evaluation of those intersections. In our traffic analysis, we actually did project out to the year 2045 for the volume of traffic for the next 25 years. So we have some techniques that we can use going from today to as development occurs or as things change in McLean. There are tools and mitigations we can use. So send me an email through the or mention me in an email on the contact list that's on the last slide of this presentation, and I can work with you directly.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I'm going to ask a few more written questions, and I'll go back to the phones. So this next one comes from Deborah. She asked, what are the plans for trees, specifically shade trees? Seems like a lot of concrete in many cities, even Baltimore, is saying they must increase trees to reduce the hot spots for livability.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Hank. Yeah, so all of the streetscapes include a landscape panel that will allow for shade trees. And then individual developments have open space and tree canopy requirements. So I think McLean actually has a pretty good job of some street trees. And yeah, there's some good photos. Go back. So yeah, as you can see the trees here, and if there's medians, there may be possibility for some trees and medians as well. But certainly we have an 8-foot landscape panel, which is more than enough to keep a couple feet under the sidewalk, but sufficient planning to sustain those trees and the longer term health and viability. So we definitely took that into account in designing these streetscapes.
Thank you, Liz. I'm going to go to a comment on parks. This is from Deborah. She says that the urban park proposed does not align with their original plans. There's been a decrease in park space, and the current should incorporate more natural spaces for gathering and less impervious surfaces.
The draft plan includes the provision of the public space. The vision plan recommended a 2/3 acre park to be provided with the development that came in with a bonus height area. That was a requirement for the development to provide a public park space. And the plan includes recommendations for the feel of that space and the function of that space to ensure that there's opportunities for community gatherings, such as plazas and things like that, and also to provide some level of activity in that space as well.
Yeah, it's something we can probably drill down into a little bit more when we, after the plan's adopted and we work on the design guidelines for the area. I mean, I would imagine that it would include a mix of hardscape areas, but also some green, grass areas and landscaped area for shading and things. So, yeah, that's, we can work more on what features and things people would like to see as part of the design guidelines.
Okay, and since we're on parks, I'll go to one more question from Sonia. I'd like to reference Quincy Park in Arlington as an excellent example of an urban park. What kinds of amenities are planned in our parks? Will there be fenced play areas for small children, courts or fields, bathrooms, tracks? If you have some from parks, you can answer that.
Hi, I'm Andy Dorlester with the Fairfax County Park Authority. I think that each development should try to incorporate some active elements, recreational amenities. But with the scale of McLean and the size of the proposed central gathering place, there won't be room for large recreational facilities such as you find at Quincy Park in Arlington, like ball fields. So the draft comprehensive plan language recommends some smaller footprint active elements, play features, interactive art, musical elements, small courts like bocce courts, splash pads, things that encourage interaction, socializing, activity, but they don't take up a large amount of space, just given the size of downtown McLean and the size of the developments we anticipate seeing, and the size of the proposed central park space.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go back to the phone lines. I have a call-in user 6. Looks like it's a 703-281 number. We're going to unmute you.
Hi, this is April Georgeless. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. I have some questions and comments. Why does the public comment end November 30th, 2020? How can residents possibly comment so quickly on something they may not yet be aware of or understand on a plan still incomplete? It took the task force almost 1 year to discuss, try to understand, and vote on form versus FAR for the center and general zone. The tie vote was suddenly decided by Commissioner Elfelder. Visual impact assessment and elevations need to be done now and will help the community to understand real structural impacts. These should show present elevation views from the border homes. Structuring and Street Sense reported that CBC could sustain 5-level mixed use with perhaps 1 hotel. This area should also be indicated. New CBC building structuring by zones as proposed by the task force and county from the border home views should be included in separate drawings. I am hearing strong concerns and preferences for limited building heights. Form does not allow for this. Stories can vary greatly in height and allow for taller structuring and many surprises. An essential concern is protecting the long-established homes adjacent to the CBC border and Franklin Sherman School. Harm and hardship imposed from taller than current nearby structuring should not be allowed. Stories should not be allowed in edge zones, only defined current heights. Many residents are looking forward to understanding how the proposed Street Sense Vision Plan morphed into the vastly expanded current proposed plan. The limited Street Sense proposal reportedly to be based on sustainability and school projections, traffic studies, etc. They were basically guesses, market reality now in flux, and presented without available data for school projections and traffic impacts. Is the new expanded plan really sustainable with realistic school projections and accurate traffic impact studies without CLRP inclusions? Have construction impact studies been completed? A greater public outreach and notification of residents about this CBC planning must occur. 2,000 postcards for CBC property owners is nice, but that's not adequate. A few hundred residents participating in sessions such as this does not really represent McLean's 60,000 to 100,000 in our regional area. Serious CBC scheduling reconsideration needs to happen. Please extend the public comment period past November 30th to better coordinate with future required public meetings. There should be many more community meetings, just as with Street Sense. Reconsider the first quarter 2021 Planning Commission hearing and BOS consideration. Why so soon? Is there a pending building project for the CBC that's starting next year? This scheduling feels very rushed for a real community transparency and public process. The task force took 2 years for CBC planning. The plan is not yet done and will not be until 2018, and the community gets 3 weeks for understanding, comments, and input. Is this fair? Can the facts be fully considered for wise community decision making? Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, April. I wanted to clarify that we don't have a public comment period closing on November 30th. I just wanted to clarify that for everyone. The task force has a couple more meetings. So any feedback that we hear today and through the end of the month, we can provide to the task force at an upcoming meeting. But public comment is ongoing on the draft plan, and we've got our contact information up here. And are glad to continue to receive feedback on the plan. There's also opportunities for public input at the public hearings when those are scheduled before both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. But I just wanted to clarify that in case that was a misunderstanding about some sort of formal comment period. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanna. We're going to go to Linda Walsh next. So Linda, we're going to unmute you.
Great. Thank you for giving us this time today, and thank you also to the staff who spent numerous hours with a group that I'm working with that it's a large portion of those who live within the CBC and us that abut to them. So I think the most concerned I have is this plan is going from a suburban plan to an urban plan. I want to make sure that all of our residents understand that and what hits, what those ramifications are. I think from the beginning of time, the McLean citizens have been concerned about the expansion or the the spreading of Tysons into the McLean area. We wanted to keep that suburban sort of enclave. So I would again make sure everybody understand the population impact, which is 6,000 to 9,000 additional people in the McLean CBC area. This, when I first looked at the plan and looked at those wonderful streetscapes, I was sold. But then I started to think about what we are giving up. We are giving up a lot of infrastructure stresses, so I want to stress our schools, especially Franklin Sherman, who is not protected by an edge zone. So now we can have a 5-story building abutting our school, which is a considerable safety concern in these days. Unfortunately, I don't think that's something I would have said maybe even 10 years ago, but unfortunately, we would like to see that edge zone expanded. Our roads are clogged and our streets are overcrowded. We see that you're saying we have models, we have studies, but the reality is it's what we're experiencing now and only slight improvements. In fact, right now we can see that the Dolly-Madison corridor going from Tysons into Old Dominion is failing. And they're telling us the only thing they can possibly do is build the infrastructure of interchanges, which are not included in the analysis of the CBC plan at this time. So, I would like to say that, I'm concerned about the form-based planning. I'm not sure it gives us that open space that we have, that we want. And I would like to ask this question in that if you had a 5-acre space, they would have to provide 1 acre of open space by the zoning planning as it is now. Can you tell me if that 2/3 of an acre park seems inadequate if they are not required to also have the additional 1 acre of open space that they would have had to provide? Understanding that it's not a park, but it would have to be open space, which is green space. Thank you.
Hi, this is Andy Dorlester again. I'll take a stab at this question. Under the zoning ordinance, open space applies to a lot of things, including park space, but not all open space is park space. Some open space is landscaped areas, parking lot islands, courtyards, private areas, some streetscape. Whereas the park space counts towards the open space, but it is an area that's designed with passive and active amenities, and it may count towards that 20%, but you wouldn't expect all the 20% to go into that one park space. There are other kinds of spaces within a development that also count towards the open space. I don't know if any other county staff wants to add to that.
No, thank you, Andy.
I'm going to take a few more questions from the phone and then go back to written. So we have Stuart Allen. Your mic is unmuted.
Can you hear me now? Hello. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Listen, let me add my voice to others. First, in thanking Leanna and her team and Kim and the task force members. I know you've been working very hard for many years, and it's greatly appreciated. I have a couple of specific questions. First is regards to parking. As I'm a resident of Salona Village, a longtime resident of McLean. As I carry out my daily life here in McLean, I find that I go to the barber, the coffee shop, grocery store, drugstore, and it's very convenient because there is visible surface level parking. and you can drive by, stop in for a quick coffee or to the drugstore. As I understand it under the current plan, in 20 years, what we could be facing is, as an example, the Langley Shopping Center in the density zone could become a 10 to 12-story apartment building. The Giant Shopping Center and the Center Zone 2 could become a 7-story apartment building or office building. The Safeway Shopping Center could become a 5-story apartment or office building. All of these would have substructure or underground parking rather than visible surface parking. So my first question is, how would this level of development and the reduction of surface parking and in favor of underground parking be supporting and beneficial to people like me, and I suspect many other residents of McLean neighborhoods? I'll ask my second question, and then maybe we could get some answers. As I understand, I live in Salona Village. It is a residential neighborhood, but it abuts the central business zone. And so the main entrance into Salona Village is Brawner Street, if you're familiar with it. It goes by Franklin Sherman School. It has an intersection at Cambridge Road, and right across Cambridge Road is the Langley Shopping Center. In 20 years, that could be a 10 to 12-story building right up to the sidewalk, as I understand. How is that a managed transition from a residential neighborhood to a 10-story building just 200 meters away? Doesn't seem like that's a managed transition, which is the objective, I think, that has been proposed in the plan. Anyway, those are my two specific questions. I'd welcome some feedback. Thank you.
This is Liz Hank. I'll take a stab at the first one. So the uses, yes, some of those properties that you identified could get intensified, redeveloped. And it could, in order to fit the intensity, it could result in some structured parking, either above ground or underground. If it's residential, if it's entirely a residential use, then it will just serve the residents. So I don't think that affects the convenience factor that you were describing. If it's mixed use in such that there's ground floor retail or what we would call not vertically mixed, but part of the site has some retail or office use and part of it has residential. We do allow for some surface parking, what we would call teaser parking, which is a little bit of parking in the front. In general, though, we're trying to encourage, if there's surface parking, it be to the side or the back, but there can be, because we know for retailer success that there needs to sometimes be some outlet, like it's shown here in this top right photo. There's a little bit of parking out front. So we're not saying that that can exist. We know that particularly in the general zone that we do want to retain some of the suburban character. We've heard that very loud and clear. So it's really the center zone that would be more of an urban style, and the general zone kind of is that hybrid. And then I guess if somebody else could take the second question.
Sure. As I understand it, the second question was kind of about height and character. You are correct. The Langley Shopping Center is in the center zone, and then on the other side of Cambridge Road is the general zone. So we do have a transition there between the zones and potential heights with redevelopment. I wanted to reiterate that the bonus height area, which would allow for up to the 10 stories, is limited to a 4 to 6 acre area with provision of a park. So you're right. There's flexibility in where that might ultimately be located, depending on a developer bringing that forward within this hatched area. So if there was, but there's one opportunity for that. And once that's implemented, there's not another site that would be eligible for the 10-story bonus. That's an incentive to provide the park. So if that were to be at the Langley Shopping Center, and the public amenity was provided there, there is flexibility there. It could be located somewhere else in this hatched area, and the plan provides flexibility to allow property owners to consolidate and come forward with proposals to provide that public amenity. We do, and we continue to look at the language that we have about transitions. And so we do have guidance that speaks to transitions between the zones and also from the edge of the CBC to the surrounding areas. And I also, I think this was part of the comment, but I'm not quite sure. I just wanted to also reiterate, if you're looking at this map, the Solana Village Shopping Center is in the edge zone and would be, so that would mean that the current plan recommendations and current development will be brought forward. So that's not part of the area that would be open to the form-based plan for new redevelopment opportunities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. We're going to go to one more question over the phone. This is from Jennifer. Jennifer, you're now unmuted.
This is Jen. Hi, this is Jen. Thank you, all the presenters, for your time today. I'm the vice president of the Downcrest Citizens Association, and we're located off 123 in between the CIA and GW Parkway, and has been suggested several times today. Traffic in McLean, as we all know, is bad. I moved here to McLean almost 10 years ago, and the increase in traffic in that 10-year span kind of blows my mind. Pre-COVID, getting in and out of our neighborhood has become progressively difficult, as 123 in particular has become a thoroughfare for folks heading to Maryland, to DC, to avoid 495, even for local drivers. I mean, it's just a mess. And I think the folks in my neighborhood are particularly concerned about the comprehensive plan having such increased density that, though folks, I think it's been portrayed that folks that live in that area may not be driving in and out in such substantial numbers as to increase the traffic for overflow. It's my understanding that the traffic study that's been done here for the comprehensive plan hasn't been done congruently and in tandem with the Dolly Madison Boulevard corridor study. And I'm curious as to whether there's any consideration for working more in tandem to avoid overflow traffic difficulties with the implementation of this plan.
Yes, thank you for the question. This is Bob Pecor with Fairfax County DOT. The study that you're mentioning, the Dolly Madison corridor study, that is basically from, let's say, Old Dominion Drive, going westbound towards the Tysons area. That is looking at a near-term solution. They have a shorter time frame of looking at possible solutions in the area between Old Dominion and, let's say, Anderson Boulevard. They're looking, or Drive, whatever it's called. They're looking at how to improve that part of Dolly Madison Road in the next 10 years or so. And they're looking at existing conditions for possible improvements to occur. The McLean study is looking at a longer term horizon up to 2045 and all that. So we are working together on, we recognize that there is the other design study happening on Dolly Madison Road. So we're looking at both of our studies work to try to alleviate concerns on 123, even though we have just a shorter segment along our frontage of the CBC, that the information that we have in our traffic model is also, they're looking at it from their perspective on what they're looking at for near-term solutions to Dolly Madison. So the Dolly Madison study is still ongoing. I believe they're going to come back to a public meeting sometime in 2021 with some other results, analysis, and proposals for public comment, but I don't have that scheduled yet, and I don't believe that has been scheduled either as yet. So, but that's something that's still ongoing, and they're still looking at other options. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. We're going to probably run a little bit over time today. We have a lot of questions, and we're going to try to answer as many of those as possible. And again, I want to remind everybody that we will be saving this on record to answer all questions after the meeting. Post those online. So back to the written questions. This one's from Thomas. One of the MCA reps indicated earlier that the current zoning rules in the CBC did not generate much development. Why is this? If accurate, what about the new plan will address this?
Can I just, this is Supervisor Fast. Would you say that, you know, over the years, there has not been an incentive for property owners to redevelop their properties, to knock down a two-story building that is generating revenue to replace with another two-story building? It does not create an economic incentive. So, you know, what we are trying to do is find I think someone said the sweet spot, the right balance between, you know, what is it going to take to incentivize property owners who are not going to voluntarily, you know, revitalize our central business district, but what's it going to take in terms of to get them to do that? And the one thing we have to offer, the most significant thing we have to offer is with respect to density. So, you know, it is, you know, it's likely that property owners will be more incentivized to redevelop if they can get additional density. That's, you know, we never give density just for the sake of density. It is a balancing act. You know, what is in the best interest of the community? What is the community's vision? The vision is for revitalization. Revitalization will require that trade-off. So, and there are other things we're trying to do. Someone mentioned the tax abatement program. That's a big deal for about 6 or 7 districts in Fairfax County, not, you know, including McLean, but such places as Annandale and Seven Corners, places that have over the years not been able to revitalize. The market has not moved the needle on revitalization. So that's what we're trying to do with this. And it, you know, we have property owners who serve on both the McLean Plan Committee and the McLean Revitalization Corporation. And we've included we want to hear from them, and they're participating in this planning process along with many representatives of the community. You know, we don't want to come out the other end of this process and have a plan similar to the one we have today, which in my opinion has a lot of good stuff in it, but will never be implemented. So, you know, we're looking to everyone, including property owners, for advice as to how we can put together a plan that works for the community and will get implemented. So that's the trade-off.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Faust. I have another question from Maureen concerning the planning process. Provided I understood the process, the plan will be put forward for a developer/investor. At that point, does the district/county retain control over the plan? That is, can the plan be altered based upon developer concerns or interests?
Developers would bring forward rezoning applications to implement the comprehensive plan, and And the draft plan provides flexibility for the use and allows for flexibility for different uses on different properties under the form-based plan. The comprehensive plan can only be amended with approval by the Board of Supervisors. So that's the last step when we get to that last step with this process. So any proposed changes to the comprehensive plan after that point would need to be authorized for staff to evaluate by the board. So a private developer, it can't change the comprehensive plan on their own. Any change to the comprehensive plan would require public review, as with this one, input from the community, staff review, and then public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors as well. So the county does retain control of the plan and review of implementation of the plan along with the community.
Thank you, Leanna. Next question is from Katie. What does sense of place mean? More specifically, what is the sense the plan is hoping to achieve?
So a lot of people, when we started this process, they love McLean, but I heard a lot about, gee, we don't have any place to bring relatives or friends. So I think what McLean has been clamoring for is a central gathering place that helps create identity for McLean, that people can identify with, that they can really embrace and feel proud of. Sense of place gets carried out in the style of the place, in the feel of the place. It can be through the streetscape materials. It can be through particular signage. It could be reflected in public art. So some of these more detailed aspects would be part of what we would explore in the, I mentioned before, we're going to be preparing or updating the McLean's urban design guidelines, which are intended to further articulate and implement the comprehensive plan. So, but in general, you sort of know what the character is of the place. You're trying to create a there, a central place that people think of. What do they think of when they think of McLean? Certain things should sort of pop into your head. I hope that helps. Anybody else can add if they'd like.
And you can look around and see examples of other communities that have a central gathering place, a place where you come together as a community. The Great Falls, the Village Center is just absolutely amazing. The town of Herndon, of course, has behind their municipal building a large gathering place where they have Friday night concerts and other events. And the list goes on. A community that works well as a community will have a place where the community can come together and be a community. I mean, it's that simple. You know, if we can implement the vision that has been described through the visioning process, we will have that. It's not going to happen overnight, but you know, it is something that I've heard since I got involved in this process many years ago, and have never been shy about saying this was one of my goals, and it's still not one that I've been able to achieve, and drives me, disappoints me. But I've heard from so many people, we need a place. Place is so critical to the creating a sense of community, and this will, you know, if you know, not exactly what is being discussed perhaps, but similar to what is being discussed, will give us that and make us, in my opinion, make a good community even better.
This is Kim Dorgan. I'd like to add to that. I have to say too that we're talking about our future, the future of McLean, and change is difficult. You know, we all have the ways we do things currently, and we're talking about change over the course of 20 years. not the change tomorrow, not the change even in 5 years. We hope to have some change in 5 years. But in terms of the residential numbers we're talking about, in terms of how tall a building might be across the street from something or other, again, it's that will take time to do, and we'll have plenty of opportunity for individual organizations to weigh in at every step along the way. But we need to figure out where we want to be as a community 10 years from now. And I think the elements that we've included in this proposal will go a long way to addressing some of the issues that we've heard from many residents. The other thing, remember, we want to be sort of competitive there to attract people into our community. A lot of the younger families moving in have higher expectations of the amenities provided by their downtown. No one wants to be in many Tysons, and plan to certainly not anywhere doing that. But we will be able to provide those amenities that do attract more families into our community. And I think we need to think about that as we plan our future.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Fairfax and Kim. Those are great remarks, I think, to close the meeting on. Again, want to thank everybody for participating. We had quite a few people participate in the meeting today, and we will, as I said, save the questions that haven't been responded to as part of the responses to those. So just a reminder, a recording of this meeting will be available on the McLean CBC webpage in the coming days. And then, as I said, any questions we didn't get to will be responded to directly to the participant or posted on the study webpage. If you did not get a chance to submit your feedback or prefer to submit feedback online, please send comments and questions to the email provided. There are a couple of additional opportunities to participate that are happening soon. County staff is hosting a virtual Q&A session on Monday, November 16th. It's going to be from 12:30 to 1:30. The next task force meeting is scheduled for the same day, Monday, November 16th, and starts at 6:30. Please check the study website for login information for both of those events. The final recommended comprehensive plan for McLean CBC will be presented during public hearings to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, expected to be within the first quarter of 2021. Once scheduled, the public hearing dates and more information about the hearings will also be provided on the study webpage. And again, that concludes today's meeting, and I want to thank everybody for their participation. Have a great day.
Thank you.